Hello and welcome to Why Wait Till Sunday. I'm your host, Alfred, and I am here with a very special guest tonight.
This guy's got it all, everything you could ask for.
Longhorn fans are excited about Bijan Robinson, number 5. This is a guy that comes in as the number 1 running back recruit in the country.
Elite, elite, elite.
Back to the ground with Robinson, who spins and then tries to bounce it. A stiff arm, another one as he rides it, keeps his balance. They're going to say step down.
He's got tremendous upside.
By Stevenson, a little bit of pressure as he launches it downfield. Touchdown, Sooners, the breakout freshman, Marvin Mims.
Ole Miss is so confused on defense. Lane Kiffin was trying to get a timeout. Instead, it's a first down, and it's a touchdown for Utah.
He's my play of the week. Smash potential here. That's what I'm saying.
The royalty of college football is in assembly at the Rose Bowl 2006.
Hello, welcome back. This is Why Wait Till Sunday, and we got a special guest tonight for our continued interview series in the off season. We got Jordan Richards at Chaboy J Rich on Twitter. He's super fun to interact with if you haven't already done so. But a member of the Destination Devy team. He works with Ray GQ, who's a pioneer in the Devy space. And Jay Rich does a lot of stuff with him. He also writes for DLF as well. Major player in Dynasty and Devy and all these awesome deep formats that we love. So welcome to the show, Jordan. What's going on?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, and you had to deal with your kids, and you gave me a reminder, so I appreciate that you reminded me why I don't have kids yet, why I'm still waiting. But you gotta love them, you gotta appreciate them. But I'm happy to be here, man. I'm glad you invited me on. Hopefully we can talk some Gators, right? I see with the jersey back there. We're both Gator fans, so more than happy to help out my fellow Gator fan.
Yeah. Well, I knew when I first, met you on Twitter or whatever, you have the Gator emoji in your bio. And I was like, well, if this guy is a Gator fan, all right, we're going to get along, because you don't see them very often, honestly. I mean, I know they're out there, but I don't live in Florida anymore, and you're not even from Florida. So we'll get to that story at some point. So yeah, you're doing stuff for Destination Devy. What's the latest thing that you guys are working on over there? I know you're always pushing the envelope.
Ooh, man, what's the latest thing at Destination Devy? Dealing with Ray he's a complex fellow. He's got a lot of ideas, right? Some things I can share, some things I can't share. I don't even know what I can't share.
Oh, what are we gonna, do we need to put this behind an exclusive paywall?
Maybe we could be on the Patreon. I don't know, but yeah, I know a lot of the stuff we're doing right now is live streams. Like, he's actually live streaming right now with the patrons. So we do that usually once a week, going over teams, players, whatever he's doing. But I know for him, and even for me a little bit, we're really tapped out on 2021. So we're probably going to move over to 2022 really soon. We're coming up with a new show idea that will hopefully drop in the next couple weeks or so. So stay tuned for that. And then potentially a few more small things, but most of the stuff is, Patreon related, YouTube related, and kind of anything else we can sprinkle in there. But that guy, he's busy, he's everywhere. So I can only take up so much of his time, but we're always trying to come up with new ideas that we can implement for all the DD fans out there, man. There's lots of them. There's like 600 patrons and 6K on YouTube. So it's lots of content for people to consume, and they're always waiting for more, which makes it even harder to keep up with the demand.
Well, I mean, that's the thing with, you get into Devy, even more than Dynasty, it never ends. I mean, like you said, you can just flip right on to 2022, 2023, and people want it because they need to know. I mean, they're actually drafting these players rather than Dynasty, where you kind of can just wait and let the rookies roll in. But yeah, I mean, there's never an end to the content and the players you can talk about. So yeah, I love Destination Devy. I can genuinely say it was the first amount of content that I took in when I started investigating Devy, and Ray made it fun. He made it exciting. And so I've been a huge fan. He was on our show, one of the first guest during the season when we were doing some DFS stuff, and so that was a blast. So I'm really glad you can join us tonight. I do want to just plug those who are listening. I am now have a new home as well. So Why Wait Till Sunday is now sitting under campustocanton.com. It's a website we started. As Ray was one of the first, I think, in the Devy space, one of the first ones that made it fun. We are the first website for specifically Campus to Canton, which the emphasis there is going to be on your college guys actually score points for you. So you are considering guys who may not make it to the NFL in some cases, but they can score your fantasy points, plus tons more. So go check that out. My co-founders would be mad if I didn't even at least plug it, but it's a great website. We're having a lot of fun over there. And just like Ray's Discord, which I'm a part of, and I need to get more into that, but I've just been busy. We have a Discord too. Ask all your questions that you were afraid to ask there. All right, enough of that. But Jordan, you are more than just a fantasy player. You do a lot of design work. I know you've done design work for Destination Devy. So, explain a little your passion for the graphic design and, how you decided, hey, this can mesh really well with fantasy football.
That's a loaded question because I think when I first started, it was really hard to I didn't really know that about myself yet. But the thing that was crazy was working with Ray. It was when we decided to do the YouTube channel. That's when kind of everything changed for me because I wasn't trying to be the face. I knew that it was his brand, his thing. So then it was like, how do I elevate that product? And it just came down to a bit of graphic design, a little bit of, coming with ideas, outlining, doing some different overlays, different things. I made the intro for the show. We actually had someone else to make the logo because I'm not that skilled. I'm still growing in that area. But I think for me, it comes down to just like finding ways to exercise my creativity. But it's funny because I don't necessarily consider myself a fantasy content creator. I've never really viewed myself that way. And I think in some ways that's a very limiting approach. If you're only comparing yourself to fantasy content creators, you're in I don't mean to be rude to content creators in fantasy, but we're talking about the bottom 5% of content creators out there because they're not as innovative as other ones are. So once you start branching out and seeing other people and the things they do in their videos, that's when you start elevating your product even further.
Yeah, and I mean, similarly, when you start wanting to create a brand, this does become more than simply, I'm ranking 10 quarterbacks today or something like that. You want to think about, imagery and how it can really, grab someone's eye. What makes you want to click on an icon and things like that, which I think you've done a really nice job because all the thumbnails, on YouTube, they're vibrant. They're colorful. It makes someone look at it and go, I want to know what's behind that thumbnail. I mean, and that's just a different way to think about it rather than just like, I'm going to put out a quality list of wide receivers or something.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I want to give you some credit as well. Cause of course, me seeing this new product, Campus to Canton, I'm going through it. I'm checking out the website, the color schemes, the things that you guys are doing behind the scenes to make it a great product. And honestly, I do think it could be really, really successful just beyond the content. I love the way it was designed. I love the way it was put together. So credit to all you guys that were out there doing that, because honestly, I don't want to poo-poo on anyone's website, but you guys have one of the better websites out there. And if people haven't checked it out, actually go check it out, go see what it's about, because not only are there great people working there, not only are they doing great work, but it's visually appealing. And to me, as someone who is a content creator, that is important. It's not important to everybody, and people don't realize it. But in the back of their minds, if it doesn't look good, like you said, they don't want to click on it. They don't want to read an article that is super just ugly and confusing, and the text is maybe super weird. It all has to be really nice, visually appealing, and for lack of a better word, simple. And I think that's one of the things that I try to do with Destination Devy is keep it simple, while also being colorful, like you said, vibrant and fun. Ultimately, in the end.
Yeah, and I mean that definitely characterizes DD's vibe is fun. But I appreciate those kind words, man. We did put a lot of thought into it. When I joined the team, it was still in kind of some of its baby steps, but they were ready to go. And me and some other people were like, hold on, let's pump the brakes. Let's take a step back and say, what do we want this package to look like when the consumer opens it? Because you got to think about people as consumers, and anyway, I appreciate that because we did put a lot of thought into it. We went through 2 or 3 different logos and kind of finally settled on one. And we're all pretty pumped
awesome
about it. So what's your, you said that you're learning on the fly, I guess. You kind of were charged
Literally.
with this task. And so what's your favorite creation? I mean, is there like a specific thumbnail for a specific episode or something else that you did, for Twitter? What's your favorite thing you've made for Destination Devy and why?
My favorite right now is actually an unreleased product.
You're good at this.
It's very simple. I think it's really cool though. But unfortunately, it's unreleased right now. But if I had to go something that actually is out, and part of it too is as I'm factoring in my own personal growth throughout like my creative journey. Because if you look at my work when I first started, and you look at my work now, it's drastically different. Like it's a lot different. But I think one thing I'm still really proud of that I made is actually the intro. Like the intro with the Gus Johnson and everything. Like a lot of people really like it, but that was something that was like a big deal to me. And it actually took me a really long time to do. Now it would only take me like an hour to do that. But when I first came up with the idea and all this stuff, it was, okay, well, what audio we're going to use? And for people who don't know, that was Denzel Ward's hit on the Maryland wide receiver in some game from, I think, like 2017. If you aren't familiar with the actual video that goes with that audio, the first time Gus Johnson ever said that about Denzel Ward, then he stuck with that nickname throughout his entire college career. But it's just, I think that for me is the most proud I am of anything, just because it's so cool and like so many people love that intro, and it kind of just caught me by surprise when really it's just like simple, but it's fun. I think it really embodies GD really well.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the you had barbecue and I wasn't invited or something like that? I mean,
yeah,
it's so good.
You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings, and that's how Denzel Ward became Hurt My Feelings.
Oh yeah, and it's a nice cadence too. I mean, it kind of like goes with a beat a little bit, like that Hurt My Feelings. Kind of, it's musical, in addition to just being a sound clip. So, yeah, that's pretty sweet. I would agree. That's a great thing you've done over there. So yeah, I mean, as you're expanding DD always, with Ray and his ideas. He's an idea man, and then you guys are putting the pedal to the metal and everything there. So you don't have to give any specifics about new things coming out, but just in general, how do you feel like your content is changing? What direction are you going to go as a, let's, for lack of a better word, let's say artist? I mean, in a way you are an artist. Content creators are artists, in the general sense, even though you're not painting with a little brush. So how do you see yourself progressing?
I think when it comes to the content side is that Ray is trying to build, and I'm trying to help him with it too, is build a brand, but a brand that's not known for just football. And I think most importantly, it's fantasy football. Like you talk about what you guys do over at Campus Kitten, it's not just fantasy. It's like you need to know everything about the player, their traits, what are they good at, what are they bad at, how do they fit into the system? Like all these things are really important. And I think at the end of the day, Ray is so much more enamored by the actual, how good is this player? What are they good at? Can they succeed in the NFL? Not necessarily can they score fantasy points. Those are two very different things, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about rushing quarterbacks. Maybe they are great for fantasy, but they're not the best quarterbacks out there. And so I think over time, I know he wants to dive more into defensive players. He wants to dive more into like the intricates of actual scouting. And so I think there could be room for that, but it's as well putting his own spin on life and all these things. Like he put out a video on the Patreon not too long ago talking about like just his life, like literally not fantasy related, not football related, just like his life, how busy he is, what's been going on. And people like loved it. So I think we want to start implementing more lifestyle content because a lot of people are just known for fantasy. And that's one of the things I hate about the industry personally. And not that it's a bad thing, but I don't want to be known as the fantasy guy. I don't want people just to ask me, oh, who do I start on Saturday or Sunday? I want to be known as someone who's bigger than that, not necessarily more important, but just does more than that. And that's why I think I found myself dipping my toes in so many different things. And like you talk about creating content across the board, not just videos or podcasts, live streams, whatever. I try to do a bit of everything just because that way people don't see me as just like the fantasy guy,
Yeah, for sure. And I think the brand building, like you said, and being bigger than just fantasy football, fantasy sports, that's where we start. That's the area that we feel like we're experts in a given experts, quote unquote. But, I think connection, and this is what I'm learning too. I'm learning on the fly. I'm a scientist by trade. That was my schooling and everything. I'm not a marketer.
What'd you take?
Well, I'm a pharmacist, so like molecular biology and all that kind of stuff. But I'm learning just on the fly about brand building, and it's all about connection. I mean, you want to connect with people, and if that happens if fantasy is a great medium to connect with someone and share, the excitement of game day and the debates over the players and that stuff. But ultimately, yeah, we want to just connect with people, and I'd rather have, 200 followers that I really enjoyed things that I have to say, and I know them, I enjoy them, then I currently have like 2,400 or something like that, but I'm starting, and it was exciting when it all started, right? But now I'm starting to kind of realize that like there's probably only like 10% of that I engage with and that wants to engage with me, and those are the people I care about. I think so much of Twitter and all this following stuff is kind of overrated, and Ray sent out a tweet recently about how he's taken some time off of Twitter, I guess, and investing in other areas. And, that's probably pretty good. You gotta see it and learn that it's about connection with few. And if it becomes a lot, that's great, but it's about connecting with who you do connect with, and not, just racking up a bunch of eyeballs that don't mean a whole lot. So I think that's a great point. I think, building a brand is so much more, even though the medium by which it starts can be one thing, but you do want
to. And I think to your point, right? You talk about like a shallow followers, like your follower count doesn't mean anything if no one interacts with their tweets. Like even for me, I have 3,000 followers, but if I don't tweet about football, not a lot of people see it. But interestingly enough, like I put out a video about baseball and people loved it.
Oh,
and
that's huge. Yeah.
Dude, that video I think it's almost at 15,000 views, and I have no idea how. Like I literally don't. I didn't put it out at a certain time. I didn't put it out like at 8 p.m. and tweet it out and put it in retweet groups or anything. Like it literally just put it out. I finished it, I think at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I'll tweet it out, whatever. Yeah. And it's just, some of it's luck, some of it's everything. But I think to your point, you want followers that are going to interact with you. And it's funny that you talk about being a pharmacist and so like not being in that marketing thing. Dude, I'm a biochemist by trade. Like that's what I studied. Way. Yeah. Yeah. And most people don't know that about me. Like I'm a science guy, and it was just what I was good at. My mom wanted me to be a pharmacist and I failed her. So props to you. Props to you for making it happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's just funny because like you said, you're learning on the fly, and that's me. And that's why I want to tell you, especially being a science guy, like don't be limited to that world, because I know they really try and pigeonhole you. But one thing I am very thankful for is that science taught me how to think very critically of everything, and like one of the things Ray tells me everything is he tells me I'm the most pessimistic person that he's ever met. Every idea he has, it has to have something behind it. It has to have some substance, some backing, some reasoning. It can't just be this loose, fleeting idea. It has to be something. And that's when, he'll bring an idea to me. I'll kick him with my reality and be like, okay, you want to do this, you need this, and this. And then he'll figure out a way to make it happen. And that's kind of how our relationship works really, really well, because I will shut down every idea he has. Mm-hmm. And he's literally called me to shut down his ideas, tell him why I don't think it'll work, so he can figure out how to convince me to make it work. And so from that standpoint, we talk about and so when you talk about brand building, especially with like for him, now he has the Patreon. So now for him especially, it's all about that, because those are the people who want to connect with you, who want to be with you. And that's not easy for everybody to do. But when you'll know when you have that big base, that big following, and for you guys building through Campus to Canton, you're going to slowly have that base of people that are always going to be following your content, always going to be interacting with you. And I think that's a great community type thing to build. And again, this goes back to being more than just a fantasy guy. This is the whole creator aspect of me, building that community, building that circle of people who you influence and you want to learn from, not just people that you want to tell what to do, but also people you want to get information back from. I think that's what I've gotten most from the Patreon, especially, is like there's people in the Patreon I'm legitimately friends with that I talk to every single day that I wouldn't have known otherwise unless they signed up, right? But that dedication to the product and to the brand is something that is just really, really humbling for me and for Ray to see all these people wanting to be a part of this movement.
Muted. That's my brand. That's my brand. To be muted. No, that's a really good word, man. And I think we're all just running around like a chicken with our head cut off for the most part. But you can tell the folks that kind of get, in a groove, get a vision, and get consistent. And that's when the people that really start, doing something. And I think otherwise it's a ton of spinning your wheels and trying to be heard. But I don't know. I've just decided I'm going to do things that I like, and, just it's fun. I mean, like, I think Ray said it before. I'm sure you've said it. It's like, once it stops being fun, then you can rethink things. As long as it's fun, then whoever wants to come on board,
Absolutely. And I think to that point, like trying to diversify what you do so you're not just doing fantasy. I was talking to Troy King today about that, and how I was like, I don't like, and that's one of the reasons why I don't have my own podcast, especially. I don't like just talking about fantasy football. I'm cool being a guest because then it's fun. You meet new people, interact with different people, all those different things. But if I was just doing it like by myself or with another person, it would get tiresome. And so that's where like my head's at. But I think, finding other things to do, and I talk about it a lot, like just finding different hobbies, whether for me it's video editing, producing audio, whatever it is, painting, doing origami, like whatever it is, just different things than just fantasy football. I think is one of the things that people need to realize. There's more things to life than just fantasy football. And I think it can really benefit people.
Yeah, and that's why I've really liked this interview series. I mean, in the off season, I just decided I want to interview people who are in the space that I'm interacting with, but talk about the tangential things that are associated with our game, but not necessarily. We're not talking about rankings or anything. We're just talking about the stuff. And I think Nick Urcolano does it with his Business of Fantasy series that he does in the off season. And this isn't necessarily, we're talking a little business tonight, but normally it's just, getting to know people in the space, outside of, we're all a little bit toned down because it's not in season. And so we can kind of just talk about some other stuff. So I'm very curious though, you're in Toronto, you hail from Canada. I can hear a slight on about and things like that. But yeah, so how did you come to like the NFL so much? I mean, I know you play fantasy, you're in Devy, you're in Dynasty. I mean, you played in these leagues as well, even though you have many other, obviously things that you like. But how did you come to get in on NFL and then get so deep in fantasy?
Well, I think it stems from my dad. My dad's a huge NFL fan. And on top of that, I don't really like hockey. So, you combine, I don't really like hockey, was never that into hockey. So from that standpoint, then, then I'm not Canadian anymore. But no, like my dad, my dad always loved football. So just kind of naturally I gravitated to it. Me and my friends even liked it. And so that's kind of how it started. Then you play fantasy football, you kind of learn about it. I've been playing fantasy football probably for like almost 15 years now. Just mostly redraft for a long time, but eventually, you start wanting a little bit more. So you go on Reddit, you say, Reddit, find a league. And, I was back in those days. Thankfully, I never have to find a league ever again. I can just one post on Twitter and I could probably be in 10 leagues. Yeah. But now it's about trying not to be in so many leagues.
Tell me about it.
Back then, it was just, I don't know what it was. I didn't really play football when I was younger. I played a bit in high school, but I always liked receivers. Like my favorite player was Chad Johnson. Like a lot of people, it's about more than just football, right? It's the brand, it's how fun he was and all that stuff. But I always kind of gravitated to receivers. And so I played receiver in high school and wasn't very good, but I had fun with it.
I saw that video.
And, I can still do a little some to some people, but I'm slow, right? Like that's what it comes down to. I'm slow. I'm big, and I used to have really, really good hands. And that's why I'm very critical of some receivers' hands, because I'm like, if you just practice, it's not that hard to catch. Especially being in Canada, we played with a Canadian sized football, which is a lot bigger than an NFL high school or even college sized football. So catching it is a lot harder. So one time we went to Michigan and we actually played a team in Michigan. Dude, we got slapped. We got slapped. It was bad. But I had fun with it. I tried to fight one of the corners when I was just like out run blocking or whatever. That didn't work, but whatever, it is what it is. But then when I saw the ball, like I caught it, dude, I could have just like one hand everything, because I'm so used to catching a ball that's a lot bigger. So from that standpoint, I'm a little critical in that sense. But yeah, it's just honestly, man, I've always liked it. I like the physicality. I've liked the showmanship. I didn't like hockey. Wasn't that into basketball either, really. I kind of just always gravitated to football, mainly because my dad really just loved it, so I just kind of got into it that way. And slowly, you get deeper into it, Dynasty, then eventually you start. I wasn't even on Twitter probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And then, I dive into Dynasty and start writing a little bit, and slowly you make connections. You DM Ray GQ, you tell him his video sucks. Next thing you know, he's a superstar.
Is that how it started?
Yeah, man. Most people don't know this, but there was a time on Twitter when I had more followers than Ray GQ. Like legit.
Exclusive. Why wait till Sunday content right here?
Well, if you go on the channel, I made a video about it like very, very early on in the YouTube channel, but so most people haven't seen it. But if you go back, it's like, I think I called it like, Who Am I? And I'm Jordan Richards. And then I talk about like who I am, but mostly the best story in there is how I came about like discovering Ray. And it was because I believe he wanted to be on, or I think Garrett Price brought him on to Dynasty Nerds. And so that's kind of how I knew who he was and started following him, but I never interacted with him before. And so one day he put out a video. He's like, I think it was about Curtis Samuel, and he was just like showing his routes or something and why he thought he could be a breakout. And I was like, dude, if you're going to put out a video about a receiver, why don't you try like highlighting the player so we actually know which one is him rather than just guessing when the video starts, because no one knows, right? And so I talk about this a lot because me DMing him that is what started our whole relationship, because he didn't take that criticism badly. He said, you know what, this guy's actually trying to help me. He's trying to help me improve it. And I was like, hey, I can help you. We can try and like talk it out, figure it out how you can do that and make this product a little bit better. And so he did. And slowly we started building a more and more of a relationship. And, when he started to do the podcast, we talked about the podcast. He, consulted me on it a little bit, showed me the first episode before it came out. So like we've been talking for a long time, and just, over time, then eventually he goes to DLF and he starts doing other things. But from that whole time, we always remained in contact. And eventually, I was just the one person that he trusted in the industry to help him with all this stuff. And that's kind of how we got started in the first place, like probably 2 or 3 years ago.
Man, that's a great origin story. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think that American football is getting bigger in Canada? Like we've started to see some guys come down, obviously Chuba, and there's a guy, I was looking at some recruits. Actually, I know there's a guy, I think, going to Iowa State this year from Canada, a receiver, 3-star guy, whatever. But do you think I feel like I'm seeing more people come down to play college football from Canada?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I would almost compare it to basketball, but I think the difference is that the infrastructure isn't quite there yet. And honestly, part of the problem is, and they talk about it in baseball a lot, like depending on if you follow baseball, is that the problem with all these recruits is they all come from southern states and California because they can play all year round, right? And I think that's the biggest problem when you talk about sports in general, whether you're playing baseball or you're playing football, any outdoor sport. Usually the people that are the best are people who can play all year round. That's why Texas, Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, California, all these states, they all have top prospects, top recruiting classes because they can play all year round. I think that's one of the issues in Canada as well. Like you look at even New York, they struggle to put out really high-end prospects because they just can't play all year round, where basketball is an indoor sport. So there's that level playing field. But I don't really know what it is. I think it could be a bit the coaching. The coaching is obviously not up to snuff, but I think it is what it is, and there's that one, like you talked about the one guy from Iowa State, and actually John Mechie is from Canada
I just learned that the other day. Actually, I didn't.
Yeah, he's from Brampton, which is like 20 minutes away from me.
Oh wow!
So it's definitely interesting for sure, and I do think it's just like kind of few and far between as to who's going to come out. Like even Chuba, he's from Alberta, like he's from the middle of nowhere probably. Who knows who his coach was? He was just fast and good at football, so someone kind of discovered him, and even he averaged like 10 yards per carry in college, and he still only went to Oklahoma State. Like you'd think a guy like that, no matter where you're from, you're going to like Alabama, you're going to Ohio State, but I'm sure those schools just didn't give him looks because he's from Canada, and who is he really playing? And that's, I think, what it comes down to for a lot of these guys. But it's cool to see some of them get opportunities for sure.
Yeah, that is cool to see. I mean, anytime you can expand the game, it's a good thing. All right, so now let's transition to our shared love. How did you come to like the Gators from Toronto? I mean, is it your family connections again? I mean, what happened there? That seems wild.
No, man, it's just my boy. It's the only player I've ever bought 2 jerseys of, and that's Percy Harvin. Like Percy Harvin was like a player I just fell in love with. I mean, I obviously love the Urban Meyer Gators, fell in love with those teams, but man, that Percy Harvin, Tim Tebow team, I just fell in love with them. Like I just loved all those guys. And so that was kind of where my fandom began. And then, you talk about playing on NCAA, I'm always the Gators. And so you just build that more and more and more. But yeah, for me, it was Percy Harvin. Percy Harvin will probably always be my favorite player all time. And that's just kind of where it began. Like just watching him play, he was just another level. And I think even on the I'm Athlete pod, him and Fred Taylor and Chad Johnson, all of them were talking about the best college player ever. And a lot of people, because Cam Newton also went to Florida, played with Percy. And even he's like, he's probably the best, like most athletic football player ever. And I think he talked about a play one time where they were down versus LSU. And the coaches just said, like, we need to give it to Percy. And they gave it to him on like a random dump off pass, one play, and he took it like 75 yards to the house. And he's just talking about just a random moment in time. But like, that's just how good he was. And that's kind of where my fandom all started as far as the Gators. I'm curious to hear your origin story with the Gators, though.
Oh, mine's not. I mean, mine's just my parents went there. I grew up in South Florida, and so I was gonna go to college. It was always gonna be Florida, or I thought about like North Carolina because I had been there a couple times. But in the end, I just was like, I want to go to UF. I mean, it's just like my family. I went to every homecoming. I mean, it's just like in my blood. I knew the campus before I ever even stepped foot, just because I'd been there so many times. So in the end, I'm super happy with the decision to go there and everything. We were there. I was there during the urban years. That was badass. This championship game, Percy Harvin did have like I was there. I was in the end zone that Harvin ran towards. It was like a kind of a read option, or kind of a draw, I think. And he just like basically made one cut up the middle, like 75 yards. And this was the McFadden, Felix Jones, Arkansas team, I think, 2006. So I think so. And I was concerned we would lose that game, but I mean, yeah, I've long said Harvin was actually the most important offensive player on those teams. Not Tebow, not Hernandez, not anybody else. It was Harvin, because he was the guy defenses could not account for, and using him as a receiver and a runner. And yeah, he was just I think in retrospect, I'm learning more about player movement and what I want to see when I'm watching film and things like that. And Harvin just had such insane body control at a high gear, right? I mean, it's like Tyreek Hill has that, where you watch him, and even though he's just moving at light speed, he's in control. He doesn't take 2 or 3 steps to slow down. It's like every step is just, and that's what is amazing to me. And I think Harvin was like that too.
Yeah, and I think the biggest point with Percy Harvin is his ability to break tackles. He was one of the strongest players, like pound for pound, when you talk about size. And that's why he was so good as a kick returner, because an arm tackle would never bring him down. And even as much as he had troubles in the NFL, Seattle still brought him on. And that was like one of my favorite moments in Super Bowl history, is seeing him return that second half kick return versus Denver for a touchdown. Because it's just like, this is all you saw in college, a dude who was impossible to tackle, like literally impossible to tackle. And that's one of the reasons I just fell in love with him.
Yeah, and just one of those guys where, he truly, the game just looks slow to him. I mean, he makes everyone else look slow, and it was just such graceful speed too. Like he just was always moving at another level. I agree. He was, I think, the most unique player on that whole offense for those 2 or 3 years. And he was one of the best recruits we ever got. I mean, I remember when we got Percy, and he wasn't even from Florida. He was from Virginia, but he was a 5-star. I was super excited, but he played quarterback, so I didn't really know what to expect. Then, yeah, I mean, he was just awesome. So what do you think? We've found some hard times. We don't have the Percy Harvin or Tim Tebow anymore, although this last year was good. But I think, look, I mean, if you follow us, I think I never really thought we were that good. I mean, we were lighting some teams up, but I'm not a big Trask believer in terms of his overall talent. It was working for a while, but what do you think fantasy-wise? We'll tie it a little bit into fantasy here at the end. Do you see any values or anybody you want to have on your rosters from the Gators?
It's not looking good. It's really not. The one guy I will mention is Keon Zipperer. And the reason why people need to know who he is because he's pretty much the only guy who could fill in for Kyle Pitts. We talked about Eric Gilbert was almost supposed to go to Florida. We now know that, that guy's not going to end up there. So I think that you need to look at Keon Zipper as a potential replacement for Pitts. I mean, we don't know how good the quarterback play is going to be. The running backs aren't very good. The receivers aren't very good. They recruited some really great defensive players, even though I believe when I was looking at their roster, they don't even have a nose tackle on the roster right now.
I know, man.
So it's just like hard times for that defense. But I think Zipper is he's a guy who could potentially fill a big role that they need in Pitts. He filled in for Pitts a few games when he was hurt. He had a 2-touchdown game against Arkansas. So, there's some ability there. And he was actually the second highest rated tight end behind Baylor Cupp, I believe, in 2019. So he's still a 4-star prospect, very highly rated by 24/7 Sports. So if there's one guy I think maybe could be something, I think that Zipper is a guy who could be really good. But again, the tight ends, we just don't know. He can have 400 yards and that would be good enough. But he's kind of like that Irv Smith mold. He's only 6'2", 240, but he ran a verified 4.61 out of high school. So he's going to be probably 4.5 fast. Because he's not very heavy and not very tall, you want him to run a wide receiver time, probably 4.5 at least. But again, we'll see kind of what he weighs in at and how his body changes. But I believe he's already put on 20 pounds. Whether or not he's got a little bit taller, who knows? But if he can maintain that speed and even run sub 4.6, 4.5 even, he's going to be a guy you want to watch out for because he's got pretty good hands and he's coming out of a system that heavily utilizes the tight end, which I fully expect them to kind of continue with that. I'm not sure why they'd go away from that when they have such a talented player at their disposal.
Yeah, I think, if you want to think about a guy like Jonnu Smith, who's uber athletic, a little bit undersized. Jordan Reed was actually a little bit undersized, just super athletic and, could run really good routes. So we'll see what Zipper does. Can't believe you brought up Eric Gilbert. That's still too soon, man. Don't know what happened there. That was weird. But yeah, I think a guy I'd throw in my hat into the ring is DeMarcus Bowman. He was a 5-star, stud recruit, went to Clemson, so he's good. And then it was a little bit. I think he took advantage of basically the kind of free agency situation we have in college football right now, where he had gone to Clemson for his grandfather. Grandfather passed away. He wanted to go back home. I don't know the specifics of all this stuff, but basically he's back home in Florida. He went to school in Lakeland, which is like an hour away from Gainesville. And the point of all that is it wasn't, performance related. He wasn't benched. He actually got some run in the very first game in a blowout, but he wasn't so buried that they wouldn't even give him the ball. So, I mean, I think he got run in the second quarter even. He got like a carry or two. So, I mean, he was kind of like bubbling behind Travis Etienne on the depth chart. I don't think it was performance related. He just wanted to go back home. At least that's what I'm telling myself, because I think he's a stud. His tape looked incredible. He can catch, incredible quickness. So I'm pretty pumped. He's going, 5th, 6th round in our C2C mocks that we're doing lately. And so I think that's a big value because last year he would have been like a 2nd round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest problem is who is he going to be playing with? Even Justin Shorter, you talk about former all-world. I think he was the number 1 receiver in that draft class or in that recruiting class. And he just wound up in Florida. I don't know.
He did blow up his patella or something like that. He had a horrible injury or something, I think, as a freshman. But I was convinced he was like the next Calvin Johnson. I mean, his movement skills in as a high school guy, and you can even tell. Just go back and look at some of those Nike openings. He was just schooling people at 6'5", 220, just incredible. And then now he's just kind of like a big tight end type dude because I don't think he has the explosion anymore. It's super, super sad. But I don't know if he ever recovered from that patella. All right. Well, I don't know if you have anybody else to talk about the Gators, but sadly, there's not a lot to talk about. I mean, that's really the take home. Unfortunately, I think one of the quarterbacks maybe, but not in Devy. I mean, in C2C maybe whoever wins the job, you could roll them out, but.
Yeah, that's a guessing game right now, right? And I think they even brought in a pro-style quarterback as well, 4-star recruit.
A freshman,
Yeah, but I want to see Jason Marshall, man. Like, I want to see if he can be that next CJ Henderson. But again, he's a cornerback. So, like, it doesn't matter so much for fantasy purposes, but you talk about just like pure pro prospects. Like, that he's listed at 6'2", 180. So,
Yeah.
you think about
Corner
the NFL
safety, I
transitioning to these big corners. He's listed as a corner, but I think he could play either one, being 6'2".
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah,
he's a big
recruit.
corner or top recruit, second rated corner in the class, and top 30 nationally. So he's good player to get out of Miami. So thank God if the Gators didn't get him, dude.
There's so many guys like from our backyard. I mean, Mullen just okay. I can't get. This will be like 2 hours of me ranting about Mullen, but he just doesn't care about recruiting, and it just makes me insane. He's a good X's and O's coach. He just does not care about because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to recruit these guys, man. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it, but if you're like head coach of a freaking major university, you need to do it. Like, that's your job.
Well, especially playing in the SEC, like you have to beat Alabama.
Yes.
Like, unless you're doing what they're doing, you're never going to be there. You're just not.
LSU,
and that's what I haven't realized yet.
LSU, Bama, Georgia, those guys are going to be top 5 recruiting classes every single year. If you're thinking that you can coach up the 10th class, maybe once in a decade you'll have a lucky season and the ball will bounce your way, but otherwise, like, the talent wins in college, man. I mean, these guys are stacking their roster 5 stars deep at every position on the 2 deep. Like, it's insane. It's like you can't compete with that if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to mold this 3-star out of Ponte Vedra.
And you even talk about like their recruiting classes. They're 5th in 2021, 6th the year before, and they're 8th right now for 2022. So, and that's SEC rank. So you talk about they might even be behind Auburn. They might even be like they're ranked 13th nationally, but they're behind Alabama, behind Georgia, behind probably LSU, behind maybe potentially Auburn. Like, that's not going to get it done. When talking about
Tennessee, I think last year with Bailey, and they had some other guys. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to go off the rails here. This can't be a Homer podcast, but well, anyway, man, I really appreciate you coming on. If you want to plug anything before we get out of here, I think go ahead and do that. And you can find him again, Chaboy J Rich. That's CHABOY J Rich on Twitter. He's also, I'm sure, everywhere else. I don't really do Instagram too much, but with all your video stuff, I'm sure you're on there.
Yeah, I got my own Instagram and video stuff, but I would say, make sure you check out campusthecan.com, man. It's going to be the new big thing. I want you to check it out. If you want to check out my work, patreon.com/allgas, join the squad. There's lots of great stuff. Like I said, I think it's 600 deep. There's lots of exclusive content, rankings, cornerstones, live streams, like all kinds of cool content, especially if you're not into Devy, you're not into stuff like that. campusthecan.com. Patreon.com/allgas. That's all you need. Everything DLF, all these other websites, just cancel those subscriptions. Come check us out. I still write for DLF here and there because they're great. They're great for ADP. They're great for Dynasty. But if you want Devy content, I'm not trying to say they're no good, but I'm just saying. Well, they're good too. But if you want to be the best, you got to go after the best. campuscan.com, Ray GQ, and Destination Devy. Those are the only 2 places you got to be. I'm telling you right now. Listen,
you can do both. You can do both.
And you can do both. It's not that expensive.
Deeper, because if you come to Campus to Canton, we'll talk to you about Buffalo's second string QB. Some of you people want to know if Buffalo has a good second string QB. That's probably a little too deep for Ray and his stuff. That's okay. We're like ridiculous with that. So come and learn about like the 120th ranked QB in the college game, and we can both coexist. Be a member of both. You'll get all the best of both worlds. Thank you so much, Jay Rich, for pumping up, gassing up Campus to Canton. But absolutely, Destination Devy, I'm gonna do you a solid back because it was like the first Patreon I literally ever joined. I wasn't even a member of any other Patreon. I've been listening to Destination Devy. I DM'd Ray, 2 years ago maybe, just to say, hey, I checked out your stuff. It's great. It was very small back then. And it's just been rocket ship emoji ever since. So still love it. I still try to catch every episode I can. It's one of my favorite pods. So definitely check that out. And thank you for being on the show, man. It's been a blast.
No problem. Thanks for having me, man. But yeah, check out the YouTube at Destination Devy. And that's it, man. That's all you need to know. But Campus to Kin, it's the new thing. It's the new thing. We do some Campus to Kin, but not like you guys. So, if you want the real deal, you know where to go. You go campusthecan.com.
All right, that's good. We're going to cut.